What's up, Taiwan? I'm Jeremy Olivier with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. U.S. President Donald Trump is staying tight-lipped on whether his administration would defend Taiwan against a Chinese attack. This is what he said when a reporter asked him about it at a cabinet meeting.
I never comment on that. I don't comment on anything because I don't want to ever put myself in that position. And if I said it, I certainly wouldn't be saying it to you. I'd be saying it to other people, maybe people around this table, very specific people around this table. So I don't want to put myself in that position.
Trump also told reporters he had a great relationship with Beijing and Chinese President Xi Jinping, saying he hopes for Chinese investment in the U.S. Meanwhile, the U.S.'s top diplomat Marco Rubio took a different stance while speaking to Fox News. The Secretary of State suggested the U.S. was committed to preventing a Chinese attack on Taiwan. China claims sovereignty over Taiwan and has not renounced the use of force to bring Taiwan under its control. More details are emerging on the dozens of Chinese military aircraft spotted around Taiwan in the past 24 hours. It comes as China designated a special zone in the Taiwan Strait for a live-fire shooting exercise without giving prior warning. Our defense reporter Jaime Okan is monitoring these developments for us. Jaime, what's the military saying?
Also, now we have some new numbers from Taiwan's Defense Ministry. This morning reported that 45 Chinese military aircraft were spotted operating around the country on Wednesday, along with 14 naval ships. And Taiwan's military has also now made public the zone in which China temporarily closed off for live-fire shooting drills. The military says that this zone was 75 kilometers off the coast of the southern city of Kaohsiung, and that a small fleet of 7 naval ships were in that zone, but they are now gone. Those numbers are a pretty big increase from the 10 or so aircraft and the 5 or so ships that we're used to seeing from China sail around Taiwan on a daily basis. The Navy here says that it scrambled its own fighters and as well as aircraft to monitor China's activity. But according to the map provided by the Defense Ministry, those drills ended around 3:40 yesterday afternoon, but we still aren't too sure. We're still waiting for an official confirmation from Taiwan's Defense Ministry of whether or not China even used live-fire ammunition in these shooting drills.
So, Jaime, given this, would you say Taiwan is worried that China will conduct more unannounced exercises in the future?
Well, Taiwan and the United States are seeing how China's advancements in military technology and its growing operations around the activity is putting a bit of a concern. It's getting increasingly difficult to actually differentiate what is a large-scale military exercise and what could be possible preparations for war. There is a concern, though, about these live-fire drills in such a congested and busy waterway like the Taiwan Strait, as they do disrupt civilian traffic, air and maritime activity. This morning, I spoke to David Sachs. He's a security analyst with the Council on Foreign Relations, and I started with asking him, what is the biggest threat when China conducts these unannounced drills?
I mean, the danger that these drills were unannounced is that obviously it affects civilian air traffic as well as civilian shipping. That obviously seems to be what the Taiwan Ministry of National Defense is focused on rather than where the exercises took place or the nature of the exercises, because the PLA, to be frank, has been conducting far more provocative actions vis-a-vis Taiwan over just the last few months, challenging Taiwan's territorial waters, large-scale exercises, as Admiral Paparo recently commented on, that look more like rehearsals than exercises. So I don't think that the scale of this was necessarily qualitatively different, and I don't think that the location is overly provocative compared to what they've been doing previously. I think it's the fact that they didn't announce it, they didn't provide warning, and the implications that that has for civilian air traffic.
And what about these unannounced exercises, the nature of these drills that are drawing concern? Well, why are we seeing this now?
What I would say, first of all, is that we know that Beijing likes to test a president right after he comes into office. So I think that everybody who was looking at Asia policy and everyone who was looking at U.S.-China relations expected a test early on for the Trump administration. They want to see to what extent he's focused on Asia versus being distracted by events elsewhere. They want to see his level of commitment and resolve to defend U.S. allies and partners. And so I think that at a certain level, this is a probing that we would expect. There's a question of where it would happen. Is it the South China Sea, the East China Sea, the Taiwan Strait? Maybe there was surprise that it happened near Australia, of all places. But I think that there is an element of probing and testing going on here from the Chinese. And I also think in the case of Taiwan, they're carefully watching what President Trump says and does on Taiwan. They know that what this is generating in Taiwan is a questioning of America's commitment.
Now, as you just heard there, is it expected that China will continue this kind of activity, kind of like what you're seeing near Australia and New Zealand with a very, very short notice on these live-fire exercises from China? It is important to remember, however, that these drills are happening in international waters, but despite that, it's still putting pressure on allies in Asia to stay alert.
Thanks for that update, Jaime. That was Jaime Okan live in Taipei. As Jaime mentioned, Australia and New Zealand were caught off guard last week when China conducted live-fire drills in the Tasman Sea. Now New Zealand is shoring up partners in the region. Chris Gorin has this report.
New Zealand and Vietnam have upgraded their relationship. That's according to an announcement from the country's leaders as New Zealand's Prime Minister Christopher Luxon visits Vietnam's capital, Hanoi. Luxon says the relationship will not only emphasize trade, but also defense.
We are building on our existing ties through high-level defense visits, port calls and strategic dialogues. And one of the things that we have discussed is the possibility of having a Royal New Zealand Navy vessel visit Vietnam later on this year.
The announcement comes just days after China carried out live-fire military exercises in the Tasman Sea between New Zealand and Australia, both of which say came with little notice and forced airlines to change the paths of at least 49 commercial flights. And Vietnam has its own security concerns about its neighbor China, including territorial disputes in the South China Sea. They're all part of growing concerns about China's continued military activity in the Asia-Pacific. And those concerns were on display in Beijing, as New Zealand Foreign Minister Winston Peters met with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi. Peters says he raised the issue of the recent military drills near his country, calling it a failure in the special bilateral relationship.
Well, we placed it in the context of, look, we've had this special relationship, which was first begun in 2008 and expanded upon. We're in our second decade of this arrangement, and this is a failure in it at this time, and we'd like to have it corrected into the future.
What exactly is the failure?
The failure to give us adequate notice.
But China says its exercises were carried out in accordance with international law.
演训活动始终保持安全、规范和专业的操作，符合有关国际法和国际实践。
Australia and New Zealand say the issue was the lack of notice and rising frequency of military drills, not the law itself. Last September, China conducted missile tests near the Pacific island nation of French Polynesia. Meanwhile, Australia and New Zealand have been increasing defense partnerships with allies like the United States, the UK, Japan, and now Vietnam. As China keeps ramping up its military and diplomatic activities in the region, countries like New Zealand may seek out further military partnerships in an uncertain time. Joseph Wu and Chris Gorin for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan has detained the captain of a Chinese ship accused of cutting an undersea cable connecting Taiwan's main island with the offshore Penghu Islands. The ship's crew of 8 is also barred from leaving Taiwan and has been put under surveillance. The Coast Guard seized the Togo flagged ship after a report in the early hours of Tuesday that the cable had been severed. Officials suspect China has been using ships flying the flags of other countries to disrupt Taiwan's inter-island network of undersea cables. Nvidia has beat expectations again, clocking in record revenue to close out 2024. And looking ahead, it's staying upbeat. The California-based AI giant's full fiscal year revenue rose 114% to just over $130 billion. Looking ahead, Nvidia expects its first quarter revenue to reach $43 billion, slightly higher than analyst predictions. Nvidia's performance is widely seen to reflect the health of booming AI. This was a highly anticipated earnings call. Last month, China's DeepSeek raised fears that AI models could be built at a fraction of the cost and computing power of those developed by US firms. For more on Nvidia's forecast, Joyce Zhang spoke with AI market expert Olivier Blanchard from the Futurum Group.
One of the biggest questions coming into this earning call was whether the AI revolution can keep up its lightning speed. What sort of clarity are we getting on that from these numbers?
So first of all, I think NVIDIA beating expectations is kind of almost like a silly thing that we go through every quarter because the expectation is that they will beat expectations. So I think that they're meeting the expectation. It's a good time to be any chip maker that is in the AI business. It's obviously still a very good time to be NVIDIA. This notion that the AI opportunity is maturing or that it's hitting some kind of ceiling. I don't think that the AI opportunity is mature yet at all. I think that we still have a long way to go before we can really call it a mature market. Up until now, it's been mostly in the cloud. We're seeing AI, and particularly agentic AI, but all forms of sort of powerful analytics-based AI moving outward to the edge, into devices, whether it's automotive, industrial IoT, smart speakers, AI PCs, phones, etc. So with respect to NVIDIA, I think that some of the analysts who are talking about maturity for the market and talking about a ceiling for the market and for NVIDIA, I think are off the mark a little bit by a few years. I think that we still have a long way to go before we reach that point.
How much does the market change, though, with the onset of DeepSeek, a supposedly cheaper and less power-hungry competitor in the AI sphere?
I think DeepSeek is not the disruptor that a lot of people make it out to be. What should rattle people is DeepSeek managed to accomplish something extraordinary with far fewer resources. And that is a model that we've been sort of expecting to arrive. It's exciting because it creates more competition. Obviously, the AI incumbent players are going to have to push a little bit harder to beat this. The impact of that on the market is going to be that we're still going to require a lot of training. We're still going to require a lot of data centers. Nothing's changed there, but we are probably going to need fewer chips, fewer racks, not fewer data centers, but definitely fewer resources than we thought we would. And that is going to put a little bit of downward pressure on shipment estimates that were basically that are a year old, because we're just not going to need that many chips to get to the same level.
Something that's been closely watched here in Taiwan is Trump's pledged tariffs on imported chips. Nvidia is, of course, one of the major customers of TSMC. How does that uncertainty factor in to Nvidia's forecasts?
We don't know what's going to happen or why and how long and what the impact will be, which is kind of at the core of this uncertainty, right? The known knowns are this. The Trump administration is serious about national defense. And the Trump administration, whether you agree with its policies or not, is serious about trying to improve the U.S. economy. And so I think that the Trump administration is very likely to continue a policy of trying to support the U.S. technology ecosystem as it relates to national security, which means that it's serious. It understands that companies like Nvidia, companies like Qualcomm, Intel, ARM, TSMC are all vital components of this. They're also viable, extremely important partners to the United States and to United States technology companies. I'm not super worried about this. So it's just kind of wait and see, but I don't think, even if tariffs come, I don't think that they'll be particularly severe or long lasting.
That was Olivier Blanchard, Research Director of AI Devices at the Futurum Group. Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, we take you to Rio de Janeiro, where a local samba school is bringing carnival life to the city. I'm Jeremy Olivier. Take care and see you next time.